Hello, my name is Amelia, and I'm 28 years old. Sometimes I wonder how I made it this far, how I'm still standing, breathing, functioning after everything I've been through. My story doesn't begin with betrayal or revenge. It begins with a little girl who used to believe that love was enough, that family meant safety, that pain was temporary. I was only 7 when my father died. A car accident, quick, cruel, and absolute. One morning he was there, helping me with my shoelaces, laughing as I asked too many questions, and that evening, he was just gone. The silence that followed his death was the kind that buries itself inside your bones. I stopped asking questions after that. My mother, Isabella, didn't take long to move on. Within a year, she married Victor, a quiet man with a stiff handshake and a permanent frown. He wasn't abusive, at least not at first. He simply existed. Present in body, distant in spirit. I remember thinking that if I was extra nice, extra quiet, extra perfect, maybe he'd warm up. Maybe Mom would smile like she used to. But neither of them ever did, not for me. When my half-sister Jenna was born, things shifted completely. The attention, the warmth, the whispered bedtime stories, all redirected. I wasn't jealous at first. I thought, she's just a baby. I'm the big sister now. It's okay. But it didn't stop. It never balanced out. It only widened. The gap between their love and my loneliness. I'd watch from the hallway as Mom kissed Jenna's cheeks, cooed her name like a prayer. And I'd stand there, invisible, holding on to pieces of a family that no longer existed for me. One day, I heard Mom whisper to Victor in the kitchen, "At least now we have a real family." That was the day something inside me cracked. And yet, I stayed quiet. I smiled. I nodded. Because even then, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could still earn their love. By the time I was a teenager, it had become painfully clear that I was a guest in my own home. Our house, the one we lived in, wasn't even technically my mother's. It belonged to my grandfather, my dad's father, a quiet man who rarely visited but never forgot a birthday. He didn't say much, but he saw everything. And when I turned 18, he handed me a sealed envelope and said something I'll never forget. "Your father wanted you to have a home, no matter what happens." Inside was the deed. The house was now legally mine, worth $600,000, though at that moment, it felt priceless. It wasn't just property. It was proof that I hadn't been completely forgotten. It was love, silent but enduring. When I told Mom, her reaction wasn't joy. It wasn't pride. It was panic. She blinked fast, then asked too calmly, "Amelia, what are you planning to do with the house?" I still remember how desperately I wanted her approval. I smiled, naive and eager, and said, "Nothing. You and Victor and Jenna can keep living here like always." Her relief was instant. She hugged me like I had saved her life. That hug should have told me everything, but I was just a girl desperate for warmth. So I kept giving. I worked part-time while studying full-time. I skipped vacations. I picked up side gigs. All while Jenna, now a spoiled, sharp-tongued teenager, slept until noon, threw tantrums over Wi-Fi speeds, and failed class after class. Still, I paid her tuition, her clothes, her makeup. Mom said, "She's still growing. She needs support." Victor never said much. He just stared at me during dinner, like I was some inconvenience that wouldn't go away. And I convinced myself it was normal, that I was being a good daughter, a good sister, a good person. But good doesn't mean valued. And family doesn't mean loved. I was keeping them afloat and drowning in silence. It was a Tuesday evening, our so-called family night. Every week, I returned to that house. My house. But I never brought that up. Not once. I sat at the table like a guest who overstayed her welcome. That night, before I could even take off my coat, Jenna came bouncing into the living room, practically glowing. "Oh my God. Oh my God. He proposed," she screamed, shoving her hand in my face. A delicate diamond ring sat on her finger, catching the light and my breath. I blinked. "Jason?" I asked slowly, recognizing the name of the neighbor's polite, soft-spoken son. She squealed again, doing a spin like she was on a reality show. Just a month before, I had walked in on my own boyfriend kissing someone else. I hadn't even processed the heartbreak yet, and here was Jenna, sparkling with fairy tales while I was still trying to sweep up the glass. Wow, Jenna, I managed. Congratulations.
She grinned.
I don't even care about school anymore. This is my future. That's when Mom, Isabella, jumped in. This is wonderful news. We need to start planning right away. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Country club, Jenna said. White doves, Isabella added. 5-tier cake, designer dress, ice sculptures. They spoke like they were royalty preparing for coronation. I tried to stay calm. That sounds expensive, I said. Mom waved me off. Don't be so negative, Amelia. This is once in a lifetime. They kept going, more guests, celebrity DJs, choreographed first dances. I just stared, wondering what universe they thought we lived in. I should head home, I said, grabbing my keys. They didn't even look up. Too busy debating ivory versus pearl napkins. On the drive back to my apartment, my thoughts raced. Jenna had never worked a job, never paid a bill, never sacrificed a thing. And yet somehow I knew, deep in my gut, that this wedding was going to cost me more than just peace of mind. It was just beginning, and I wasn't ready for what was coming next. A week passed. I tried to convince myself maybe they'd come to their senses. Maybe the initial excitement would wear off, and they'd scale things back. I was wrong. Mom called one evening with her signature tone, soft, fake sweet, the one she only used when a favor was coming. Amelia, sweetheart, can you come over?
We need to talk.
It's important. I sighed, already exhausted from work, but I went. Out of habit, out of duty, out of some lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, they would finally consider my limits. The moment I walked in, Jenna shoved a binder at me, bursting with magazine clippings, venue brochures, fabric samples. I've planned everything, she said proudly. The venue has a fountain and a garden, and they release hundreds of white doves after the vows. Isn't that magical? I tried to keep my voice steady. Sounds expensive. Oh, and the band? They played at a celebrity's wedding, she added, like that was a justification. Did you set a budget? Of course. She handed me a printed sheet. I looked down, scanned the numbers, and nearly choked. The venue alone cost more than my entire annual rent. Add in the catering, the designer dress, the decor, the entertainment, it was outrageous. Are you joking? I asked, unable to hide the edge in my voice. Jenna frowned.
No.
Why would I joke about my wedding? I looked at Mom, hoping for some sense. But she crossed her arms, already defensive. Amelia, don't ruin this moment. I spoke calmly, trying not to snap. I already pay for Jenna's college, her clothes, her living expenses. I'm not funding this fantasy. Mom scoffed. That's what family does. We help each other. You're her sister. No, I said. I'm her bank account. That's what I've become. Jenna's eyes narrowed. You make good money now. You can afford it. Just because I can doesn't mean I should, I replied. That's when she muttered the words I should have expected.
Fine. I'll just ask Daddy.
The knife twisted. Victor, who had barely looked at me for years, would now be pulled in as backup. And something told me he wouldn't be neutral. 3 days later, I got a group message from Isabella. She wanted a family discussion that evening. I already knew what it was about. Still, I showed up, part of me curious to see how far they'd go. Victor was sitting at the dining table when I arrived. Arms folded, eyes cold. Jenna stood next to him, a smug little smile on her face. And Mom, Isabella, looked like she'd just won a battle. We've been talking, she began. And we have a solution. A fair one. That word, fair, tasted rotten coming from her. We think, she continued, that the most practical thing is for you to sell the house. I blinked. Excuse me? You live alone, Victor said flatly. You don't need a whole house. And it's not like you're planning to raise a family there, Jenna added with a shrug. It makes sense. Sell it. Move into an apartment. Use the money for the wedding. The money? I asked slowly, voice ice cold. Yes, Isabella said, brightening. The house is worth, what, $600,000? Even after the wedding, there'll be enough left for Jenna to get started on a new life. It's an investment. The room spun, but I kept my feet firm. That house isn't an investment, I said. It's my inheritance.
It was my grandfather's.
My father's memory. It's the only thing he left me. Victor stood. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. I repeated, heart pounding. You want me to give up the only thing I have for a wedding Jenna hasn't lifted a finger to earn? Jenna's smile vanished. You're selfish, she snapped. You want me to have a cheap wedding? Like some loser? Isabella's voice was razor sharp. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? You gave me nothing, I shouted. And then it happened. Victor's face twisted. He grabbed the ceramic vase sitting on the table, heavy, decorative, completely unnecessary, and hurled it straight at me. It hit the side of my head. Pain exploded. My knees buckled. But I didn't fall. I reached into my purse, blood dripping down my temple, and pulled out my phone. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. And then I dialed 911. I stood in the living room, trembling but upright, one hand pressed against the bleeding side of my head, the other gripping my phone like a lifeline. 911. What's your emergency? My stepfather just assaulted me. He threw a ceramic vase at my head. I'm injured. Please send help. My voice didn't shake. It burned. Within 15 minutes, police and paramedics were at the door. Red and blue lights painted the walls of the house that had never felt like mine until now. When the officers stepped inside and saw me, injured, blood running down my cheek, they didn't hesitate. Victor tried to argue. It was an accident. She was yelling. But they'd seen enough. Officer number 1 stepped forward. Sir, place your hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for assault with a deadly object. Victor shouted, This is ridiculous, as they handcuffed him. Isabella rushed forward. This is a misunderstanding. She provoked him. She's always been dramatic. Officer number 2 turned to her. You and your daughter stood by and did nothing while he injured her. You're both being charged as accomplices. Jenna, pale and wide-eyed, screamed. You can't do this to us. But they could. And they did. As they were being let out, I stepped forward. Blood still clung to my temple, but my voice was steel. This was your last chance. You chose violence. You chose greed. I'm going to make sure all 3 of you get exactly what you deserve in court. Jenna spat. You'll regret this. I shook my head.
No, Jenna.
For once, I won't. The paramedics gently helped me onto a stretcher. You're going to be okay, one of them said softly. I nodded, finally letting the tears fall. Not from pain, but from release. For the first time in years, I wasn't the victim in silence. I was the voice. The house, once full of cold glares and fake smiles, stood quiet as I was wheeled out. And in that silence, a promise took root. They came for what was mine. Now, I'm coming for justice. The hospital was cold, bright, and quiet, a strange comfort after years of chaos. I sat on a gurney, the side of my head wrapped in gauze, listening to the beeping of machines that, for once, weren't screaming at me like my so-called family. The doctor said I was lucky. No fracture, no concussion, just bruising and a deep gash that would leave a scar. You were strong to stay on your feet, the nurse told me. I smiled faintly. I've had practice. When I was discharged, I didn't go back to a friend's place or a hotel. I went home. My home. The house was eerily quiet. No voices, no slammed doors, no tension humming in the walls. For the first time, it felt like a sanctuary. I walked through every room, touched the worn edges of picture frames. I stopped at the fireplace where the vase had once sat, the one that was now broken, like the illusion I'd held onto for years. It was time. The next morning, I booked an appointment with Mr. Hunter, a respected attorney recommended by my Aunt Barbara. He reviewed the police report, the hospital records, and the footage from the officers' body cams. You have a strong case, he said, his tone confident but kind. Assault with intent to harm, and both accomplices can be charged with aiding and abetting. I nodded. I don't want a warning. I don't want parole. I want real consequences. Then that's exactly what we'll pursue. The legal filings were swift. A restraining order was put in place immediately, and within days, Isabella, Victor, and Jenna were officially charged. Meanwhile, I received calls from Kevin, my cousin. Amelia, maybe you should let this go. They're family. No, I replied flatly. Family doesn't put you in the ER. Even Aunt Barbara tried to reason with me once. Sweetheart, this will be long, painful. So was living with them, I said. This time I wasn't backing down. I had lived in fear, silence, and guilt for too long. Now I had a name, a voice, a lawyer, a case, and soon I would have justice. The courthouse felt colder than the hospital. Not because of the air, but because of who was sitting across the room from me. Victor, dressed in a wrinkled suit, looked smaller than I remembered, but no less cruel. Isabella sat beside him, arms crossed tightly, lips pursed like someone had just insulted her pride. Jenna, dressed like she was going to a fashion show, refused to look at me. The trial was swift. The evidence was damning. The body cam footage from the officers captured everything. The broken vase, the blood on my face, the screaming, the denial, the threats. The medical report confirmed blunt force trauma and documented the injury with clarity. And when Mr. Hunter stood before the judge and described years of manipulation, financial exploitation, and finally physical assault, the courtroom fell silent. Victor's lawyer tried to paint it as a moment of heated emotion. My client deeply regrets his actions. He acted out of stress. But Mr. Hunter didn't let it slide. This wasn't a mistake. This was a culmination of years of coercion, entitlement, and abuse. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. They didn't just try to take my house, I told the judge. They tried to take my voice, my peace, my dignity. And when that didn't work, they tried to break me physically. Jenna finally looked at me then, her eyes brimming with hatred or shame. I couldn't tell. The judge didn't take long. Victor was found guilty of assault with intent to cause harm. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Isabella and Jenna were convicted of aiding and abetting, with 18 months each in county jail. No suspended sentences. No fines in place of accountability. Just real consequences, the kind I'd waited my whole life to see. As they were handcuffed and led out of the courtroom, Jenna turned to me and spat. You'll always be alone. I held her stare. Maybe, but at least I'll be free. When the gavel came down, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something better. Peace. When I stepped back into the house after the trial, everything felt different. Not because anything had changed physically, but because for the first time, it was truly mine. No Victor brooding in the corner. No Isabella criticizing my choices. No Jenna stomping down the stairs screaming about her Wi-Fi or her wardrobe. Just silence. Not the kind that hurts, the kind that heals. I spent the first few days cleaning out their rooms. Not out of anger, but closure. Every drawer, every shelf, every hidden stash of old drama was sorted, donated, or dumped. I boxed up years of weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. In the attic, I found a dusty photo album tucked inside an old trunk. My father's handwriting was on the front. Amelia's firsts. Tears welled up in my eyes as I flipped through the pages. There I was, chubby-cheeked, giggling, reaching for him. He held me like I was the whole world. And for a while, I had been. I sat there for hours, cradling memories that felt more real than anything I'd lived in years. That night, I made tea in the quiet kitchen. The same kitchen where they once told me I was selfish, dramatic, difficult. Now, it was peaceful, and it whispered a new idea. Start something of your own. I had always loved cooking. It was the one thing that calmed me. The one thing they never tainted. So I opened my laptop, set up a camera, and created a channel. Meals with Meaning. It wasn't fancy. Just me in my small kitchen, cooking and talking, sharing stories, both recipes and scars. I wasn't expecting much. But within a week, one of my videos, Comfort Food After Cutting Off Toxic People, went viral. The comments poured in. Your story gave me courage. I felt this so deeply. Please don't stop. For the first time, my voice wasn't just heard, it was welcomed. The same house they tried to take from me, it had now become the place where I found myself. Not by force. Not for them. But for me. I never set out to be famous. I just wanted to feel human again. But something about the simplicity of it, cooking, speaking honestly, offering comfort through recipes, it struck a nerve with people. In just 2 months, my channel Meals with Meaning hit over 100,000 subscribers. Brands started reaching out. First, it was small kitchen tools, then ingredient companies, and eventually a publishing house asking if I'd ever thought about writing a cookbook.
Me?
The girl who once sat at the dinner table like a shadow? Now I was building a life on my own terms, with the same hands that once served others in silence. Every video I made started the same way. Welcome home. You're safe here. Because that's what I had always needed to hear, and now I was offering it to thousands. Sometimes people from the past reached out. Kevin, my cousin, messaged me. Didn't think you had it in you. Guess I was wrong. I didn't reply. Aunt Barbara called once. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Truly. That meant something.
She'd always seen me.
Even Jason, Jenna's ex-fiancé, emailed me. He apologized. Said he'd been manipulated too. That after they moved in with him, he realized the truth quickly, how they used people like stepping stones. I should have seen it earlier, he wrote. I'm glad you got away.
So was I.
But I didn't reply to him either. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's silence without pain. I recorded one final video in that series, a simple dish my dad used to make with me, garlic butter pasta with fresh herbs. I cooked slowly, sharing a memory between each step. At the end, I held the plate up to the camera, smiled, and said, they try to take everything, even this house. But this kitchen, this peace, they're mine now. And so is my future. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was freedom. The kind that grows when you're no longer surviving. You're living. One morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the kitchen tiles, the same kitchen where I used to feel like a stranger. Now it felt like mine in every corner. Even the scar on my temple, just near my hairline, felt less like a wound and more like a reminder. I wasn't broken. I had survived. Not just the vase. Not just the years of silence. But the suffocating belief that I had to earn love to deserve peace. That belief was gone now. Replaced by something gentler, a quiet confidence that I could exist just as I was, and that was enough. I stepped out into the backyard with a cup of coffee in hand. The garden was blooming. Herbs I'd planted weeks ago were thriving in the sunlight. Basil, rosemary, thyme. Life. Real and grounded. The same soil where I once buried my anger was now growing hope. My phone buzzed. Congratulations, Amelia. Your YouTube channel just hit 500,000 subscribers. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that's loud and wild, but the kind that stays with you for hours. The kind that feels earned. I had messages from viewers across the country, and even some international ones. You helped me leave an abusive relationship. Your stories saved my life. You made me feel seen. There were thousands of Amelias out there. And now, they weren't alone. Because I wasn't silent anymore. I made one last update to the channel description. This home was nearly taken from me. But I stood my ground and built a new life in the same walls they tried to break me in. Welcome to Meals with Meaning, where healing begins in the kitchen. I went back inside, opened the windows wide, and let the spring air rush in. This house, once filled with pain, now smelled of garlic, lemons, and freedom. This wasn't just my comeback. It was my becoming. And there was still one last message left to say, not to my audience, but to the ones who once tried to erase me. I didn't just survive you. I became someone stronger because of you. It was late evening when I stood in front of the house, my house, watching the golden light flicker through the front windows. This was where it had all happened, where my father once tucked me in, where my mother erased his memory, where I became a shadow, and where I finally stepped into the light. The porch still creaked in the same place. The wind still rustled the same tree outside the kitchen window. But everything else had changed, because I had changed. Not long ago, I stood in this same spot, bleeding, humiliated, and alone.
Now,
I was whole. No lawsuits hanging over my head. No guilt controlling my every move. No voices telling me I owed them something just to exist. The court ruling had closed the last chapter for good. Victor, Isabella, and Jenna served their sentences. There were no apologies, no redemption arcs, just silence. And I had no intention of breaking it. My attorney, Mr. Hunter, called earlier that day with one final message. It's all done. The case is closed. Your name is clean. Your title is secure. And so was my peace. Inside, the kitchen smelled like lemon cake. My latest video had just gone live. The comments were already pouring in, people sending love, stories, and sometimes recipes of their own. I looked around the kitchen, the hallway, the living room. Each room had once felt like a battlefield. Now, they felt like chapters of a memoir, one I was finally proud to write. I walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting in the night air. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, they tried to take this house. They tried to take me. But I didn't just protect a home. I reclaimed my life. And with that, I stepped inside. Not as someone surviving her past, but as Amelia, a woman who had turned every wound into power, every scar into story. Because this house, it wasn't a symbol of pain anymore. It was a monument of strength. And they would never take it from me again. If you felt every emotion in Amelia's journey, if you believe no one should ever be forced to give up what's rightfully theirs, then don't forget to like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support helps these stories reach those who need them most. Thank you for watching.